Evelyn had been driving for hours. Her eyelids grew heavier with each passing mile, and the empty highway stretched endlessly before her. She was heading back to her hometown for a family reunion, a trip she made reluctantly every year. This time she decided to take the back roads, hoping the scenic route would offer some respite from the monotony of the interstate. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the road, she noticed her gas gauge dipping dangerously low. Relief washed over her when she saw a flickering neon sign up ahead, Roy's Gas and Convenience. She pulled into the small, isolated gas station, the only light in a sea of darkness. The station looked old and run down, as if it hadn't been updated in decades. The paint was peeling, and the sign buzzed intermittently, casting an eerie glow. Evelyn parked next to the pump and got out, stretching her stiff limbs. She glanced around, noticing the forest that surrounded the station, the trees looming like silent sentinels. She picked up the gas nozzle and started to fill her tank. The night was eerily quiet, save for the faint rustling of leaves in the breeze. After a few moments, Evelyn heard the door to the convenience store creak open. A tall, gaunt man with hollow eyes and a forced smile stepped out. "Evelyn," he greeted, his voice raspy. "Need any help?" Evelyn forced a polite smile. "No, thank you. Just filling up." He nodded, his gaze lingering on her a moment too long, before he turned and went back inside. Unease settled in the pit of her stomach. She finished pumping gas and decided to use the restroom before continuing her journey. She walked toward the store, the wooden boards creaking under her feet. Inside, the store was dimly lit and filled with outdated products. The man stood behind the counter, watching her intently. Evelyn quickly found the restroom and locked the door behind her. She took a deep breath, splashing cold water on her face, trying to shake off the growing sense of dread. As she dried her hands, she heard faint whispers coming from the other side of the wall. She pressed her ear against it, straining to make out the words. The whispers grew louder, more urgent, but she couldn't understand what they were saying. A sudden, sharp knock on the door made her jump. "You okay in there?" the man's voice called out. Yes, I'm fine," she replied, her heart racing. She hurriedly opened the door and walked back into the store. The man's eyes followed her every move. She decided to grab a drink and a snack for the road. As she approached the counter, she noticed a bulletin board on the wall, covered in missing persons flyers. Her stomach churned as she saw how many there were. "Busy night?" she asked, trying to sound casual as she placed her items on the counter. The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. "We don't get many visitors these days. Not since the disappearances." "Disappearances?" she echoed, her voice barely above a whisper. The man nodded slowly. "Folks go into the woods and never come out. Some say the forest is cursed." Evelyn's pulse quickened. She paid for her items and quickly made her way back to her car, the man's words echoing in her mind. As she got into her car, she noticed movement in the tree line. Her breath caught in her throat. She squinted, trying to make out what it was, but the darkness was too thick. She turned the key in the ignition, and the car sputtered, but didn't start. Panic set in as she tried again, the engine refusing to turn over. She glanced back at the store, seeing the man watching her from the window, his expression unreadable. Evelyn grabbed her phone, but there was no signal. She cursed under her breath, glancing back at the forest. She could have sworn she saw figures moving among the trees, their shapes barely discernible in the gloom. Desperation took hold. She got out of the car and approached the store, her heart hammering in her chest. The man stepped out before she reached the door. "Car trouble?" he asked, a hint of amusement in his voice. "Yeah, it won't start," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Do you have a phone I could use?" The man's smile widened. "Sure, but the line's been dead for years. You're welcome to wait inside until morning. Maybe someone will come by." Evelyn hesitated. The last thing she wanted was to spend the night in that creepy store. But as she looked around, she realized she had no other option. She nodded reluctantly and followed him inside. The hours dragged on, each one feeling like an eternity. The man sat behind the counter, watching her with those hollow eyes. Evelyn tried to stay awake, but exhaustion eventually overcame her. She drifted off, her head resting on her arms. She woke with a start. The store bathed in the pale light of dawn. The man was gone. She got up and hurried outside, hoping someone might have come by. Her car was still there, but something was different. The hood was slightly open. With a sinking feeling, she approached and lifted it. The engine had been tampered with, wires cut and parts missing. She felt a presence behind her and turned to see the man standing there, holding a wrench. "I told you," he said softly. "The forest doesn't let anyone leave." As he stepped closer, Evelyn realized the truth. The gas station wasn't just a stop along the road. It was a trap, a place where travelers were lured and never seen again. The figures in the forest weren't just legends. They were the spirits of those who had come before her, forever bound to the cursed woods. And now she would join them,